we've got a bit of interference here. If Ian could maybe move to a different room. Welcome to the BOTH 2021 coaching conference, and many thanks to Hilary and Peter and Denise for all their efforts in getting this happening. It's great to see so many people joining us this morning. I really wasn't expecting to do this, so thanks everyone for coming. Just a few housekeeping things. Hope everyone's technology is working. I expect we'll probably have some technological issues, at least someone will, over the course of the session. If you have any issues, pop something in the chat box. Ian's going to be monitoring the chat box for us, and he'll try and sort things out. Also, Denise is there if you have any problems, so do get in touch if you're having problems. So the session this morning, as you're all aware, is all about strength and conditioning for orienteering, but I kind of actually would rather call this strength and conditioning for fun, because I think although we're all orienteers and we love orienteering and we want to get better at orienteering, I think one of the things we very much all want to have is have fun. And I think the aim of this session is to kind of help you guys as coaches to build ideas and confidence in delivering strength and conditioning sessions for your clubs and your groups. And I think it's something that's particularly poignant at this time in sort of our third lockdown, with all the restrictions that are likely to be going on for many months to come, to find ways that we can connect as clubs in sort of within these restrictions in our own homes. It's amazing what you can do in your living room, in your house, with sort of very minimal or no equipment. And hopefully today we'll sort of share these things that you can do that's very kind of inclusive to kind of all club members, and kind of maybe enable some of that social connection that we can't really have at orienteering events and club training that we're used to. At the moment, when it's winter, it's cold and dark, sometimes it's nice to be able to do something indoors, and it's also fun and part of our physical training. So that's sort of where today's coming from. In terms of, I needed to start this off with a bit of disclaimer. I actually have major imposter syndrome at the moment. I don't actually feel qualified to deliver this workshop. My sort of strength and conditioning experience comes from just doing quite a bit of it during my time as an orienteer and a runner. I'm very fortunate to have had some great coaching, both at a club level, back in the day of the SROC club night when I was a junior, through to I was very fortunate to be part of the Edinburgh University Performance Programme, and we had some great strength and conditioning and coaching there, and also part of as part of the British squad when I was orienteering a bit more seriously a few years ago. Some great people like Kim and Jackie over the years who have taught me a lot. From a sort of professional background, I'm a junior doctor, and as such I've learned quite a bit of anatomy at some stage, but I think a lot of my kind of enthusiasm for strength and conditioning has actually come from being injured myself as a runner and trying to work out how my body works and what we can do to try and prevent injuries and things. So I don't feel qualified to deliver this. I'll try and answer any questions people have, and if I don't know the answer, I'll either try and find someone who does or go away and try and find out. So but I look forward to sharing kind of some experiences with you guys. In terms of for the session, given we're such a big group, it's slightly impractical throughout the session to be unmuting and talking, but very much look forward to sharing ideas as particularly towards the end of the session, and also on the chat. So Ian's monitoring the chat box, so pop anything there, he'll interrupt me with things, and we'll take it from there. I would love this to be interactive, but there's so many of us. So what's today going to look like? We're going to start off with having a bit of a chat about strength and conditioning and thinking about how you could design your own strength and conditioning session for your club and group. We're then going to chat through some sort of key exercises which I think are important, and also thinking about how we could coach them, particularly in a remote format, and thinking about how we can adapt them and maybe progress them for our different ability levels. Later on we'll kind of put this into practice. We'll do a mini circuit session together, and then towards the end we'll kind of think about thinking forward, and also about sharing ideas and different. I know there's lots of people on this call who've got lots of experience and lots of expertise, and it'd be really good to kind of hear from different people. So for the first half an hour, we're probably, you can have your brew, you can have your coffee, so do feel free to grab a drink. I'm probably preaching to the converted, but is kind of what is strength and conditioning, and sort of why is it important, and why are we talking about it today. I think there's a lot of jargon about strength and conditioning and all the different terminology that we use around it. I think I sometimes like to go back to what do these words mean, and strength is all about kind of being able to produce a force from a sort of sports science point of view, whereas conditioning is all about kind of training to move in certain ways. So I think of strength and conditioning as about enabling your body to kind of move better, and so we can sort of move better and run better. So I think again, it's got a lot of jargon, and it can take place in many different forms, and it's all strength and conditioning, and it's all really valuable in different ways depending who you are and what your stage and your goals and things are. So we've got some circuit training, we've got some Pilates and some yoga, and this is all sort of helping build different aspects of strength and conditioning. We've got some sort of weightlifting and plyometrics going on down at the bottom there. This is all different aspects, and different things will be relevant to different people in different contexts and things. But I think there's definitely bits of strength and conditioning that are relevant to us all. So I think it can be kind of packaged up as all the other stuff that isn't your cardiovascular training, the stuff that's working on, oh, sorry. I've just had a little, I think I must have pressed the wrong button, sorry, 2 seconds. All the stuff that is building strength, it's building agility, building flexibility, that sort of thing, and always coming back to that movement quality. And as we said, it can take many forms, and it doesn't have to involve weights, and it is very much something that can be done in your living room. So why do we do strength and conditioning? What are the benefits? If we can move better, we can run more efficiently, we can run faster, we can run further, or we can just keep running or we can help build our running up if we're someone who's new to running. And I think for a lot of people, injury prevention is a big part of it. We can only keep enjoying our sport if we can stay in, we can prevent injury and things. So that's, I think, the summary of why we do it. There's lots of very much a simplification. So if we think about strength and conditioning for us as orienteers, is there anything in particular that's important? This chap here looks like he's mid-clean in some Olympic weightlifting, and he's obviously very strong, but is it the strength that we need in sort of for orienteering? So if we think, what are the physical demands of orienteering? It's primarily a running sport across very rough and uneven terrain, and that's what separates us from cross country or track running. So if we break this down, running you could think of as a one-legged sport. You're flying through the air. Generally, there's only one or no legs in contact with the ground at any time. So that sort of leg strength is really important if we're thinking about getting up hills, through marshes, through tussocks. Having that leg strength is really, really important. The terrain, you could think of it as sort of pushing you around, and you've got to be able to adapt to the terrain and sort of readjust as the sort of terrain pushes you around. And this kind of gets on this concept of core stability and being able to control all those forces that the terrain is pushing on you. And then probably the most common orienteering injury is that ankle strain. So thinking about making sure we've got good balance and proprioception. So I know a lot of us are kind of in a bit of orienteering withdrawal at the moment. So just got a video here that kind of mainly just for fun, but also if you could look at the runners' kind of bodies and kind of how the kind of strain that running is putting through them, and particularly looking at, let's say, their knees and their hips and their feet, and sort of think about why we need to be strong, and also just because it's a fun video. Sorry about the image quality, it doesn't seem to. So I hope you enjoyed sort of seeing some forest there. I think we'd all like to get out and be back out in the forest. So hopefully sometime soon. So before we start thinking about some specifics of strength and conditioning, there's a few concepts which are useful to kind of keep in the back of your mind if you're with designing a session, and also sort of when you're thinking about coaching. And the first one is sort of specificity, in that the exercises that will be most useful to your participants and athletes will be the ones that are most like the sport that they do. So exercises that are most like and encompass sort of more similarly the movements of running will be most useful to us as orienteers. So anything that kind of challenges movements like running will be good. Obviously there are times for sort of more static things, but that might be less useful, but we'll come on to talk about that a bit later. Like with, as I'm sure you're aware, kind of quality is by far the most important thing, and it's much more important than sort of any quantity of exercise or any load you're using. And given that we're trying to train our body to move in the right way, we want to be using good technique when we're doing the exercises. So later we'll come on to thinking about what sort of coaching points and techniques you can share with your participants to try and help them get that good quality of the exercise. One thing that kind of talk about quite a lot is a concept called neutral spine, and I suppose it's just posh words for making sure that you've got good posture. I know that this is definitely how I feel when I've been sat at a desk for too long, you know, sort of everything's not quite in the right alignment. I think the reason this is important is that our bodies were designed to be used in a certain way, and all our muscles attach in certain ways to so we can sort of use them the most efficiently. Our spine is meant to be curvy, but it's just about making sure it kind of curves the right amount in the right places. And there's a couple of things that can help people think about how is their spine, where is their spine, and are they sort of and the first of these is thinking about what's happening with your pelvis. And your pelvis can tilt forward and tilt back, and we kind of aim for this kind of place, generally aim for this place in the middle, your kind of neutral pelvis, and you can sort of experiment with this by tilting your hips forward and back, and finding that sort of place in the middle. Another good helpful way to think about getting your neutral spine is imagining you've got a helium balloon attached to your head, sort of pulling you up, relaxing those shoulders down and kind of getting that nice sort of tall position, and thinking about where is your center of mass. So these are just things that we can think about going forward when we're into some of the exercises that we're doing. And as I've just noticed, I've got terrible posture just now. And just lastly, I thought it'd be useful to just talk about a bit of the concept of core. I think from sort of the sports science literature over the years, it gained very prominence a wee while ago, and actually now they're sort of debunking some of the myths around core. I think one of the things is it's really important that we don't conflate core with abs. Our core is much more than that. It's kind of all our musculature around our trunk, so our both our kind of abdominal muscles, but also our obliques. So these are our sideways muscles. So if you put your hands in your pockets, they're those muscles there. But also importantly, our back muscles, the muscles kind of around our pelvis that stabilize things. And I suppose, why is core important? If we think our core and our trunk is what connects our legs with the rest of our body. So if we're going to run and transfer force, we've got a wee picture of Mo just here. If we're going to transfer that force from our legs to get us to propel ourselves forward, we've got to control that force that's coming up through the pelvis and into the rest of the body, and we want to get it to move forward. So we've got to be able to control the rotational forces and transfer that force. We'll kind of come and think later about why and how we can train our core. And I think again, we sometimes conflate core with ab muscle, sort of ab exercises, but actually most of these exercises are actually working a much wider range of muscles and kind of using that whole trunk. So let's kind of put our coaching hats on, and we'll think about how we're going to plan a strength and conditioning session for our club. And we want that session to be beneficial. We want it to get the benefits of strength and conditioning that we've talked about. We want it to be fun. I think generally, it will be fun, but we want to think about, can we do anything to make it more fun? But obviously we want it to be safe, and we don't want to look after our kind of participants and things. So I hope we've already kind of mentioned why, the sort of why question and why we're doing it. We'll come and think about some of the other aspects. So let's say you send an invitation to your club saying, we're going to do some club strength and conditioning virtually via, let's say, Zoom, and think about kind of who would be interested in coming. And it's likely that you'll get participants that are a range of age, that are a range of fitness levels, and they've got a range of experience with this sort of thing. And that's actually just one of the absolute beauties of orienteering and the clubs that we have, is that sort of range of people we have. But it does provide challenges when you're trying to deliver kind of coaching sessions. It's something that we want to kind of make sure that we can provide something that kind of meets those different needs. It was really interesting looking at on your sort of sign up sheets what people were interested to kind of to talk and learn about, and one of them was actually talking about how we can adapt these things to meet sort of the needs of kind of older adults and our kind of older participants in our clubs. And there's a lot of evidence that's looking at the importance of strength training for older people, and actually the evidence is very positive in terms of the beneficial effects of it for sort of across a really wide age groups. I think it has important effects on sort of preserving muscle mass, preserving balance, kind of improving kind of metabolic health and bone density and that sort of thing. And I think it's quite a big research area, because if we can prevent things like falls and hip fractures, that's really great for public health. So actually there's a lot more kind of evidence out there than I perhaps expected when I was sort of looking into this. This is a review article that if people have a lot of time, and it's not a particularly light read, but it's available on the internet, and if people are particularly interested in sort of strength training for older people, naturally kind of what it does say is that you've got to select the right exercises. You want to make sure you've got kind of the volume and the intensity right. But yeah, it's very positive about sort of strength training in older people, and we'll come on later to talk about how we can adapt things. I think this has been sort of reflected in our sort of national physical activity guidelines, and this is from the Chief Medical Officer saying that actually this building strength, this is the guidelines for adults and older adults, and actually building strength training is part of that. It's recommended to do it at least twice a week. And although that some of that will be sort of carrying heavy bags or doing the vacuuming, sort of some kind of formal strength training is very much recommended, and also this idea of doing more balanced stuff, particularly as we get older, is really important. So we'll come on later to talk about how we can adapt things for different people. And obviously the most important thing is every individual is different, and I think that is a challenge when we're delivering things particularly remotely, when you're not there with your participants, and I think you do have to I think as a coach, one of the things you can do is kind of provide that range of options, and sometimes it will be down to the individual to select their own level, but obviously it's important to kind of how you kind of brief participants, and maybe we can come and talk about that a bit later. The other thing that people kind of interested in is sort of strength and conditioning in younger people, and likewise there's a lot of evidence looking at strength training in young people, and again, generally the evidence is very positive, that young people get the benefits from strength training, and it can help prevent injury and things. But like with everything, it's about doing the right stuff in the right amounts, and obviously you don't want to do too much in younger people, and obviously young people is such a wide range, from sort of your kind of prepubertal young people to your sort of adolescents and things, where they're growing and developing, and everyone's different. So I think, again, this is a slightly less heavy review. I would recommend it's actually really quite good. And if that's something you're interested in, as a sort of, let's say you're a regional squad coach or something, that's quite good. I think the sort of training you'd probably deliver on a club level to young people, I think, is generally fairly safe, and I wouldn't worry too much about that. But as I say, I'm no expert. So, so I think we come on to sort of our where question and kind of how are we going to deliver our sessions. This kind of talk is very much gearing up towards the sort of virtual delivery of strength and conditioning, sort of where people kind of find a bit of space, where that would be in their homes or in their gardens, and doing it there. And as there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to that. We've talked about the advantages, that it's something we can do at the moment. Obviously, you're not there with your participants. You're not able to maybe provide the coaching that you could sort of in an in-person setting. But I suppose it's just kind of being aware of those sort of drawbacks. You can't maybe provide the feedback on technique that you otherwise would have done. There might be a stage in the next few months where we're able to meet outside, but we're not able to meet in a kind of formal sports hall venue like we used to think nothing of doing. And that in itself, you know, there's lots of things you can do in an open space that you can't necessarily do kind of in the living room. So thinking about, you can do things like running drills, or you've got a bit more space and you can do exercises that just need that bit more space. So it's thinking about what options do you have, and where could you do it, and what's the weather like, and doing if it's cold and rainy and muddy, these things outside might not be so good, but come the summer months, it might be that you can do a great session kind of in your local park or something like that. Great. So if we come to think about kind of what are we going to do, how are we going to plan our session, and I think you can kind of simply simplify your session into thinking that we'll need to have a bit of a warm up, we'll do our main bit of the session, and then we'll cool down. So if we think about the warm up, what do we want to do? We want to just do things that will kind of raise our heart rate, raise our get ourselves breathing, and kind of mobilize our muscles, and that's well, when we come to do our session, we'll do a little bit of a warm up. Obviously there's lots and lots of different ways that you can warm up, and I think it's just about adapting the things you'd normally maybe do over a big space into the sort of things that people can do on the spot, or you could send people out into do some laps of the garden, or you know, anything you can to get people moving. And then if we think about how are we going to plan our session, one of the things that I think can be a bit overwhelming with strength and conditioning is actually there's just so many exercises out there. There's just so much. How do you choose what to do, or how much of something? And I think one of the things to say is that actually it doesn't really matter. You know, choose some things that you know are a nice variety, a kind of a good fun, work different muscle groups, and if you're thinking about, oh, I don't know how much to do, maybe have a play, do it yourself, plan a little session, do it yourself, think, oh, was that about right? Think about how you can adapt your session, and progressions. We'll come and talk about that later in terms of different how we can do that. And then with our exercises, how are you going to organize it? Are you going to do each exercise for a certain amount of time or a certain number of repetitions? Are you going to sort of do sets of exercises, and how many you're going to do? And think about what rests are you going to have in between them. Rest is very important. And is there, you can, I think things will be fun just as they are, but you can do additional little things to add bits of fun and challenge, and how does that fit into your session? I've just put a wee link there to a free countdown timer. There's lots of countdown timers available on the internet, but that one works quite well, so just in case you didn't. And then, so thinking about how we organise things. So this is just for an exemplar of things. You might have a number of different types of exercise, and you might decide that you're going to do them for 30 seconds each, and then you're going to have a 15-second rest between them, and then you're going to repeat it around 3 times. So that'll probably be done in less than 20 minutes, but you've got a good session there. Or you might think that actually, I think we want to, we're going to kind of work through this together and doing a number of repetitions, and we're going to repeat each exercise twice and before we move on to the next one. And they all have kind of different advantages and disadvantages. For example, if you're kind of working through an exercise, sort of, let's say you're going to do an exercise for 10 repetitions and do 2 sets, it gives lots of people time, to get familiar with the exercise. They don't have to sort of kind of remember all the exercises and things. So everything has pros and cons. Or another option is you might do some mini circuits. So I don't know why I kind of divided these into sort of body part. You could easily have a mixture of muscle parts that you're working, but you could have some little mini circuits. So you could have 3 exercises which you do for a certain amount of time, and then repeat that little circuit a few times. That's just a way of and again, it might be that people find that kind of easier to kind of remember the exercises and remember the coaching points that you've mentioned. So that's just two little ideas about how you could organize things. And again, there's no right way to do it. It doesn't really matter. Sort of any exercise is good. So that's just a little idea. So we're just thinking about how you can adapt and progress your exercises. This is a really there's a really good website called Science for Sport that produce and summarize lots of sport science evidence, and this is a really nice infographic they've got about how you can adapt exercises. And I think adapting is really important when you've got our sort of mixed ability groups that we're often going to have as orienteers. And also thinking about how we can progress things. Let's say you do a series of sessions, how you can kind of help people make the exercise slightly more difficult to kind of challenge things more. So if you think about the different ways we can adapt something, we could do that by as this image shows, by kind of changing our base of support. So if we could start thinking about actually how can we make something easier, if we can make it easier by kind of having more support. So if we were doing exercise but actually we need something to hold on to, and that'll help us sort of do the exercise. Or actually we want to make our base of support more unstable, exemplified here by using sort of a kind of a Swiss ball sort of thing. Obviously we might not all have access to that, but even things like just a standard cushion can make your base of support a bit more wobbly, and that sort of will challenge your balance a bit more. A lot of exercises kind of, we all instinctively can adapt our lever length even if we don't sort of think that that's what we're doing. So kind of classic example would be our press up. If you do your press up on your knees versus your press up on your feet, that's easier just because we're adapting sort of how we're kind of using the load. So there's a lot of exercises that you can adapt in that way. And often we can you could make a movement more complicated. So you can do an exercise and add a twist or something like that to sort of make things a bit more challenging. So when we go through some exercises, we'll think about how we can adapt them. And if we're thinking about how we can make it harder for certain people but not necessarily other people in our session, we could think that actually some people could do, let's say, more reps of the activity, or they might be able to do more sets and things like that. Sorry, wrong device. So if we think about, let's say you're doing a program of sessions for your club, and how can we kind of build it and progress it through your program. One thing you can do is you can increase the volume. So that might be, if you start off, let's say, doing your session with the exercises for 30 seconds at a time, the next time you could do it for 35 seconds or that sort of thing, and build up. Well, maybe not the next time, but maybe in a few weeks time, you could maybe add another exercise so your session is slightly longer, or you could increase the number of sets you do after a wee while. The other thing is having a variety of exercises, although I think it's probably good to repeat the same session a few times and people can gain familiarity with the exercises, and also kind of see their own progression. As people kind of do it, they'll realize that actually they're getting better, and that's really good. And I think that's really important for people to be able to kind of see their own progression. Having a variety and doing maybe some different exercises both kind of keeps it fun, but also different exercises will just work different muscles. So that's beneficial. So you could maybe have 2 sessions, and you could do the session A for a few weeks and then add in session B, and then sort of mix it up. So that's just an idea. So, and then thinking about your cool down, I think generally this is some sort of stretching and things, but obviously there's lots of different types of stretching. I suppose you'd want to focus on stretching your sort of main muscle groups that you've been working that session. Everyone does their stretching a different way, and there's I personally like to work from sort of bottom to top to make sure I don't miss anything, but it's a nice way to get different people involved by getting different people to contribute stretches. I think the other thing that shouldn't be forgotten is actually the importance of having a bit of time within your session for sort of the social aspect, and cool down is a good opportunity to have a good chat and kind of make sure people kind of feel involved and feel in the session, because maybe during the main session people might not be able to have that sort of interaction. So the next section, we're going to talk through some key exercises. As we've said, there's so many exercises out there. This is just a little selection of ones that I've chosen for kind of illustrative purposes. And we'll talk about some of the key coaching points of the exercises, and also how we can adapt them kind of within your sessions just to make them easier and make them harder. Everyone kind of in different ways. So if you fancy kind of getting up and kind of having a go while we're doing this, that's absolutely fine. But obviously we haven't warmed up yet, so maybe take it easy. And then after we've talked through these, we'll have a little comfort break, and then we'll warm up and do a little circuit session using these exercises. So our first exercise is a bit of a classic. It's our calf raise. These photos were taken when it was significantly sunnier in our back garden. I think this is a classic exercise that's given out by physios with people who have foot injuries, people who have Achilles problems, and it really targets our key muscles of our calf, our gastrocnemius, the kind of higher calf muscle, our soleus, the bottom calf muscle. Some people like to do this on a step, but you can also do it on some stairs, or it's kind of the main use for my textbooks these days is to create a bit of a step, or you can do it just on the floor. If you're thinking about what you want to say to participants while they're doing it, I think there'll be a bit of a common theme with all the exercises. It's all about the slow and controlled. The slower you go, the more it challenges the muscle, and both on the going up section of your calf raise, but also the lowering down. So this is called eccentric loading, which is kind of another way of strengthening. I don't really understand the science, but that's kind of when you're going down and making sure it's going down nice and slowly. So to help people do that, it might be that you sort of suggest kind of counting, so kind of going up over a count of 1 and 2 and going down over a count of 1 and 2 and just try and kind of emphasize that control. I think the other thing is about making sure everything's kept in line. You don't want your ankles to kind of wobble in and out, well, they might do a bit depending on kind of your strength. And the other thing is your knees, making sure the knees stay nice and kind of straight above the ankle, that they're not sort of wobbling in and out. I think at first, if you're struggling to keep everything aligned, I think that suggests that you need a bit of help with balance. So maybe kind of holding onto a wall, and that can really help with the balance. Kind of the thing to make this easier is kind of using some support, let's say holding onto a wall or a chair, and then if you're finding it too easy, going onto a single leg is a good way of making it harder. And if you're doing this, making sure that those hips stay level, and that they don't sort of drop either side. Another thing to make it harder, but more from a balance perspective, is having your eyes closed. Another sort of variation that's not necessarily a progression is if you do your calf raise with a bent knee, that sort of engages your soleus a bit more, so just kind of strengthens that other bit of your calf muscle. So so that's kind of our first exercise. I think it's very simple, but really important for us as runners. Great, lovely. Our next exercise is the glute bridge. It's a really good exercise for engaging in kind of making sure your posterior chain is firing well. So your posterior chain is kind of your muscles of your glute, your hamstring, so your kind of calf, which is what's really important in your leg extension in that sort of flying phase of your running. And if with this exercise, you sort of lie on your back with your feet nice and close to your bum, and then you sort of squeeze with your hips going up towards the sky. And I think when you're coaching this exercise, it's really about telling people to squeeze, really squeeze those glutes and push those hips as high to the sky as they can. And just like our calf raises, it's all about that slow and controlled movement. It's about making sort of, and when you do the movement nice and slow and controlled, you'll engage the muscles much more. You can, depending how where your arms are, they can provide more or less sort of support. I think your kind of basic version is doing it with double leg, but the kind of progression could be moving on to a single leg rise and lower, or you can, in that sort of double leg position, you can sort of march with your feet going up and down and making sure to keep your hips nice and level. What's kind of interesting with this exercise, people can play around with how the distance is between their bum and their feet, and depending how far away they'll load kind of the glutes and hamstrings in different proportions. Recommend having the feet nice and towards the bum, then that will really engage the glutes, particularly at first. Next exercise is something called the slide glute raise or side leg raise. Probably has lots of names. I think the name doesn't really matter. And this is all focusing on our hip abductors. So this is primarily our glute med and our glute min. And these are really important muscles that help control where the knee is, in making sure it doesn't sort of flop in and out when we're running. So when we're doing this exercise, we're lying on our side, often have the lower leg sort of bent for a bit of support. And what's really important is that we make sure that our shoulders and our hips are nicely stacked on top of each other. We want them, make sure they're not sort of leaning forward or leaning back. I think it's important that we kind of tell people to just work within the kind of range of movement that they can. Some people seem to have hip flexibility is highly variable, and people just work within the movements that they have. With this exercise, the idea is to really use our hip abductors to lift our leg up to the sky. But what we don't want to do is have the leg out in front, in which case we'd just use our hip flexors, which are much stronger muscles. So you wouldn't be working those abductors. So to kind of help with this, we can have the leg slightly further back rather than coming out in front and lifting that leg. I think it's one of these exercises that the first time you do it, you're like, oh, what am I working? But particularly if you've not done it much before, after a few times, you should really start to feel that muscle in the side of the hips starting to work. Kind of variations in this exercise to kind of challenge it is to kind of lift the leg and hold it there, or lift it there, lift the leg and then make some small circles with the foot. And again, this is just challenging the muscles to work slightly differently and just adding a bit of variation. Our next exercise is your kind of classic lunge. Obviously there's so many variations on this exercise, and it's really one that everyone knows and everyone's kind of familiar with. But saying that, it's actually quite a complicated exercise, and it uses lots of different muscles, and it's kind of really similar to our running in terms of the way it uses sort of the glutes and the quads and our core and things. So in terms of coaching points for this exercise, we really want to be aiming for those 90 degrees at the hips, the knees and the ankles. So kind of encouraging people to kind of experiment with how their stride length to make sure they get those 90 degrees. We want to make sure that that knee is nice and strong and it doesn't drop inwards. It stays nice and strong. And for some people, it's if you sort of encourage them to sort of push it out towards their little toe, they'll keep it nice in the right place rather than falling inwards. I think a lot of this, a lot of the kind of exercise in the lunge is actually kind of the movement in between it and staying balanced in between your lunges, and again that sort of kind of helps challenge our balance and working on all those sort of proprioception and kind of ankle stability. And if you're feeling nice and coordinated, you can add in some arms to help sort of your running arm movements while you're doing it. There's lots of adaptations you can do for your lunge. Probably one thing to make it slightly easier is, rather than sort of coming in and out of that lunge position, you can stay in that lunge position and just sort of raise and lower there, and it'll still really engage your glutes and your quads, but you don't have that one of the challenging sections of kind of going in and out of the position. You can, adaptations include doing a reverse lunge, so rather than lunging forwards, you can lunge backwards. The other things you can do is challenge your balance by doing things like adding in a twist or kind of putting arms overhead. So there's all sorts of things you can do, and these are all things you can do without any extra equipment. But obviously, if you have things like weights or medicine balls, you can add these in as to kind of spice things up.
Quick question from the chat here, Zoe. There's been various things, lots of people sharing lots of useful resources. Very many thanks to
Thank you very much, everyone.
for sharing lots of good things. Clive Wilkinson questions whether you have a feeling over lifting straight up with the hips during a glute bridge versus kind of rolling up from the spine. Opinions in the chat seems to be that either has different benefits.
Yeah, I often, if you're doing we've quite got into these Pilates YouTube videos that we've been doing recently, and they'll always talk about, you know, those lifting those vertebrae one at a time. I think it really doesn't matter. I think the kind of end position's the same. You're engaging the same muscles. I think I don't think it really matters. I think either option is a good exercise. But I think I wouldn't worry. I think it's I think maybe if people have back problems and you want to be really careful about how people kind of are moving, then maybe sort of the slower option is good for them. But I think from a sort of running perspective, the sort of straight up lift is good as well. So I wouldn't worry. Thank you very much, Ian, and thanks everyone for your contributions. I can't multitask enough to interact with the chat, I'm afraid. So moving on to kind of our next exercise, we've got our just a kind of single leg balance. So this is really looking at our ankle stability. When we're coaching this exercise, I think it's important to make sure that people don't lock out their knee, that they keep that slight bend in the standing leg, and again really thinking about making sure that knee stays strong, it doesn't fall inwards or outwards. I think particularly females, particularly younger girls, have this this tendency to have sort of for the knees to fall inwards, and that can just to do with sort of pelvic positioning and things. So it's really, there's kind of a group to really watch for making sure that knee stays nice and strong. When we're doing our single leg balance, we want to make sure we keep our hips level. So if you imagine kind of where your spiky bits on your spine, making sure they stay level. If you kind of tuck your t-shirt into your shorts, you can see much more if you're staying nice and level. And this is an exercise where you can individuals can choose their level of challenge. So for some people, they might want to do their single leg balance, but also kind of have a bit of stability with a wall. That can change from kind of very much holding on to the wall to just having a wee finger on the wall, and then you can think about how you can progress this by adding in some movement, adding in some running arm swings, closing your eyes. It's amazing how much harder it makes it, how much your kind of vision adds to your balance, and then again standing on some form of uneven base. That's great. So sort of a progression in thinking about how we can build our ankle stability is thinking about some more single leg work, so thinking about some hopping. Again, there might, for some people, that hopping might be a bit too much, and this is something they wouldn't want to do. So again, it's sort of about kind of empowering people to kind of choose their right level of challenge. I think the thing about hopping is really thinking about sticking the landing, and just starting with really small distances, even if it's just a few centimeters, and really sticking those landings, and making sure that knee doesn't fall in and out, and then think about kind of how you can make that more challenging by hopping a bit further, or if you want to hop over a hurdle or just any other object you might have hanging around like a book or something, and just to make that a bit more challenging. For some people who don't want to hop, and one thing you can just do is kind of step from leg to leg and hold that balance, and that's another way, something you can challenge the balance more than that static single leg hold, but without going as far as the hopping. So just kind of transferring your weight from leg to leg and holding that balance for a few seconds. So now we're going to move on to some of our sort of more trunk and kind of core exercises. First one is something called a dead bug. I'm not a big fan of the name, but it seems to be what it's known as. And this is an exercise where you're lying on your back. You've got your kind of arms in the air and legs in the air, and the idea is to lower kind of opposite arms and legs slowly and controlled to the ground, and again using kind of counting can make sure people do it nice and slowly and get the benefit from the exercise, and rather than, because if you kind of do it fast, you're sort of using momentum and inertia, and it doesn't quite train the muscles the same way. One of the important things with this exercise is about keeping your back nice and flat against the mat, not letting it kind of arching, and encouraging people to kind of breathe nice and normally. It's really easy when you're doing some exercises to kind of hold your breath, and we want people to keep breathing.
So there's been some conversations going on about a comment about younger girls, which I totally missed. Was that something on one of your slides that stimulated some discussion?
Oh, I think we're talking about kind of hip valgus in younger people. Sorry, what's the? Well,
there's a lot of comments saying, is there any more information? What's this younger girls comment? I have no idea.
So I don't know. It's if you imagine that your kind of legs come from your hips, and one as your kind of hip changes shape, it can kind of change the angles which your kind of legs work at. And one thing that kind of which is seen in some people is that their knees can kind of fall inwards, which isn't necessarily a problem, but in some people, if it then kind of affects their biomechanics and things, it can not be ideal. So I think it's about sort of, particularly because of how the pelvis changes shapes in girls, the kind of the knees is more liable to maybe falling inwards than maybe, let's say, in guys. I think it's just something. I'm no expert in biomechanics, and I think as a club coach, I don't think you'd be necessarily expected to assess people's biomechanics and things, but I think it's just about encouraging as good technique as you can, and thank you very much to people who are providing expertise in the chat. Much appreciated. Maybe we'll hear from some of you later. Sorry, where am I? So thinking about, coming back to our dead bug, if some people find that they can't keep their back flat on the mat when they're kind of lowering alternate, so opposite arm and leg. One thing you can do is you can just lower one limb at a time, be that just lowering one arm or one leg, and that will still challenge the abdominal muscles. And if you're finding the one arm, the opposite arm and leg too easy, you can do both arms and both legs at the same time. But again, it's about making sure that people do it with good technique. So another kind of abdominal exercise that uses a bit more of the sideways movement with the obliques is a bicycle crunch. So with this exercise, you're lying on your back and you're bringing your opposite elbow to opposite leg. And the more slow and more controlled you do this, the more it'll engage those muscles. If you can lift as much of your shoulder and your back off the ground as possible, that's great. But if it's but for some people, this might be quite a hard exercise, and what you can do is, rather than keeping your legs in the air, you can rest them on the ground and move the kind of the shoulder and the elbow around, while keeping either keeping both legs on the ground or just keeping one leg on the ground, and that can make things a bit more straightforward, and yeah, make it harder by doing it as slow as possible. And another kind of exercises that kind of uses all those abdominals, obliques, and kind of stabilizing muscles of the pelvis is our kind of Superman exercise. So in this exercise, we can really think about maintaining that good neutral spine and neutral pelvis. It's a good position. This sort of starting in what we call kind of tabletop position in yoga, or kind of on all fours is a really good position for people to kind of experiment with that movement of their pelvis, and kind of experimenting with tilting it forwards and backwards, and finding that kind of sweet spot in the middle, which we're kind of aiming for. With this exercise, we really want to keep our hips and our shoulders as level and as flat as we can. If you imagine that you've got a big tray of drinks on your back, and that's where you want to stay while you're doing the exercise. And again, these nice and slow movements, raising opposite arm and opposite leg off the floor, and try and get them nice and parallel with the floor. As you can see in that picture, I've not got my arm particularly parallel with the floor. And then slowly lowering it down, and then raising the opposite arm and leg. The next side, variations in this one is, what you could do is, rather than doing both an arm and a leg, you could just do one arm or one leg. And that's a way of sort of adapting it, and it's still kind of keeping that kind of shoulders and back nice and level. Variations, you can add some pulses in the leg, and that will really nicely engage that glute. Another variation, you can bring the arms and the knees sort of together to sort of meet in the middle, and a way of making this exercise harder is, rather than starting in this kind of tabletop position, you could start in a sort of sort of your plank position on your arms, and raise arms and legs from there. And that's kind of a way of making it harder again. So just kind of thinking about these adaptations of how you can do it to a lot of so great. So I think this might be our last exercise we're talking about. So this is just some toe touches. Again, it's kind of, there's so many different crunch-based, ab-based exercise out there, I don't think, and they all all work. They all work the same muscles, so it doesn't really matter which you do. And I think, and with this, you're kind of aiming to get your legs as straight as possible. As we can see here, Ian's legs aren't particularly straight, but and the idea is just to raise your shoulders up as far as you can go, aiming to keep your neck in a nice neutral position, and aiming to reach those toes. Adaptations, you can have your legs bent, or you could keep your legs on the floor and still just sort of aim to raise that kind of shoulders and chest off the floor. Another option you could do is, to make it a bit harder, you could do your toe touch, and then you can add in a bit of a leg raise, so lowering the legs to the floor and back up, just to kind of, that would work the lower abdominals, in addition to the kind of upper abdominals you're working in your toe touches. So lots of different variations, and yes, of all your abs exercises, I think it doesn't really matter which one you do. Anything is good. Lovely. So I think we'll just have, given that we're been going for just about an hour, we'll just have a bit of a comfort break. So feel free to go to loo. We'll have maybe a few minutes, go to loo, and then when we come back, we'll do a little warm up and a little circuit session together, if that's okay. And yes, thank you again, everyone, for all your great comments and sharing ideas, and we'll do some more sharing ideas later. So yeah, just a couple of minutes if anyone needs to go to the loo, and people can find their space to have a bit of room to do the session.
Thanks, Zoe. Sorry, anybody I let in last minute. I didn't realize there was a couple of people in the waiting room, so that's a huge apology from me. Ian, did you get in with the...
Yes, thanks, Denise. I can share a couple of other things now, Moisley.
Okay. I didn't actually, it's interesting because all the chats up, there was no indication that anybody was in the waiting room until you asked me that. So I'm sorry, I know there was 2 or 3 other people. So that's too bad. Zoe, how are you doing? You're doing a great job.
Yeah, sorry, I am good, thanks. It's just a bit chilly in our house. I think we need to turn the heating back on.
You need to get moving here.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, sorry, I've not been able to monitor the chat box as much as I'll use it as an opportunity to go through it now. But thank you very much, everyone who's been seeing lots of really good good comments kind of popping up there. So thank you very much to everyone who's been contributing. That's really useful, and we'll hear from. Yeah, later I think there's definitely some people here who've got some great things to share. So once we finished our session, we'll get people unmuted and sharing things, sharing their thoughts. But if anyone does have any questions or things they'd like to say just now while people are maybe with Lou, feel free.
Can people unmute themselves? I'm not sure if I've actually put people on so that they can't. No, you can, because I know Hillary quick.
Yes, we can. I've unmuted myself.
Perfect.
I think we can, yeah.
Yeah, we
Lovely.
can.
Great.
There was a comment about your new accent, Edinburgh accent, Zoe.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. I think it comes and goes, I think.
Here's an interesting question for other people on the call then, while we're here. Very early on, we had a question relating to BOF insurance and strength and conditioning, to which my research and prior conceptions suggest quite strongly that yes, we're insured to do anything that we feel that we are competent to do in terms of delivering S&C type sessions. I don't know if some of the long-standing BOF coaching official type people on the call would like to come in on that.
I think a lot of clubs did a lot of strength and conditioning when it came to sort of the phase where there was sort of the British Orienteering Club Night, and lots of clubs did a lot of strength and conditioning. Strength and conditioning does come under part of the at least the level 2 coaching course. I'm not sure. I'm not. So I think if you're, let's say particularly if you're a qualified British Orienteering coach, you have done some strength and conditioning as part of that.
The question was from myself and partly came from the fact that British Triathlon has an additional module for level 2 coaches on strength and conditioning, which appears to be required before you're covered. So it was just getting that clarity that the basic level 2 coaching covered us, if that's possible. Recognising it, I couldn't find anything absolutely categoric, so it would be good to know.
Oh, thank you very much that's really helpful.
My response would be that the level 2 coach is as it is as the course that we have it, and there's no additional need to do an extra element, whether it's strength and conditioning or other any other sense that you are covered as a level 2 coach. The need for insurance. Okay, Ian's putting up here on the chat. Thanks for that, Ian.
Is Hilary Palmer still on the call and able to feed into this at all?
Hello? Hello?
We can hear you,
What's your
Hilary.
view on the
You can hear me? Yeah, I was muted and off the video. Yes, absolutely. What you've said is right. It is covered in the level 2, obviously at a basic level, because some coaches in clubs would like to be able to take some circuit training, some fun activities in the local park and so on. I totally understand that some coaches might not feel confident doing this, but what Zoe is sharing with us today, particularly the coaching points and the ways of differentiating, making things easier and harder, does give coaches, I think, that confidence. So just give it a go with a few friends from the club and gain confidence that way. But as long as the activity is registered, you are definitely covered by British Orienteering if you are a licensed coach.
And that would go in line with Kirsten and Angela have just asked the question, if we're organizing strength and conditioning sessions over Zoom, should we be registering them? And I suppose, Hilary, you've just answered that question. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry, just sort of setting up the room a wee bit. I think that's our 5 minutes, so I'll just I just realised I've got something else quite organised.
What do you want? What do you
No,
want?
it's okay. I'll do it on this one. Sorry. See which other this is the.
No, what do you need?
I have my timer set up, but I realise it's on this one. Sorry, guys. Can I use that?
Oh, that's a good point. Can we put it on full screen? So basically what you need to do, Zoe, Ian, is to, or maybe that's me, I need to put it on presenter screen. So let's have a look here for a second. Gallery view, speaker view. Is it on? Well, I'm speaking now. Zoe, can you chat and make sure you go on full screen? Yes. And you're going to take off your shared.
Yeah,
No.
sorry. I'll stop sharing. That's good. And then, and it'd be great to be able to see you all and join it.
The full screen thing is, I think, a user option. So if you were to sort of hover over Zoe, you should be able to pin that video. So there's a wee dots in the top corner if you hover over someone, if you're in gallery view, and then you can pin that person, and then they will become full screen. If that's what you are wanting to try to do.
Sorry, I might just try and share my screen for a bit and then I'll stop sharing. Sorry. Thanks everyone for coming back after our wee break, and thanks everyone for their kind of input and discussions and things. So the plan is to have a bit of a session together. It's the sort of thing that you could kind of do with your club over Zoom. Sorry, I thought I'd share my slides, but I obviously haven't. Oh, it is good. Sorry, I'm just not working. And so how this is going to work, we're going to do a bit of a warm-up. We're then going to go through the exercises that we've just talked about in the order on the screen. Don't worry about, we're going to stop sharing the screen so we can see each other, but we'll talk them through and we'll kind of also go over those kind of coaching points that we mentioned and those different options. This time, because I think you're really strong, we're going to do each exercise for 40 seconds. We'll I'll try and remember to say halfway if it's a single leg exercise, or if you're choosing to do it as a single leg exercise, so that you can swap legs. It will have 15 seconds rest in between each exercise, and we'll run through the circuit twice. Does that sound okay? Any questions about that? Pop it in the chat, and we'll just get ready to rumble with a bit of a warm up. Great, so we'll start off just to get warming. We've all been sat down, or some people might not have been sat down, but we'll just start off with a bit of a march, sort of getting moving, getting some movement into our legs, get some movement into our arms with a bit of a arm marching. If people are finding that with kind of people are working from home and things, they're sat down a lot at desks and things, and just good to kind of get moving. Even though I've only been sat down for a while, I feel a bit stiff. So get that nice movement, and really think about kind of, how our feet are moving, how our knees are feeling, getting movement in our hips, and we'll just transition that into a little jog on the spot, if that's okay for you. Obviously, if you're not wanting to jog at the moment, and just kind of, you could maybe just kind of walk, continue to march on the spot, but we'll just transfer it into a bit of a jog. And just get that heart rate up, get that heart pumping, that lungs going. And then we'll sort of just kind of continue to warm up our arms by doing a bit of swinging, giving yourself a bit of a hug in the middle there, kind of activating those shoulders and things. Making sure you don't accidentally hit your person next to you, or any furniture, anything like that. Great. And then we would do some circles in your arms. Again, I'm quite in danger of hitting our lampshades, but sorry, I'm sort of see my legs but not my arms. So yeah, I'm just doing some nice arm swinging, just to get all the body moving while we're jogging to help me warm up. One thing you could say to your club is, you could say, we're going to do this session, but actually, could everyone be warmed up before we start? Say, could people go for a 5-minute jog before? But actually, I think it's probably best if you know that your participants are nicely warmed up if you do it with them. So now we're going to just touch the floor, and touch the floor with your left hand, and touch the floor. Just kind of getting people to move a bit more. Touch the floor. And touch the floor again. Great. And now, if you're okay with it, we're just going to do a wee bit of jumping. But obviously, if that's not for you, feel free just to keep on jogging or marching. So we're going to touch the floor and we're going to jump up. Again, watching for any low ceilings or anything like that. And touch the floor and jump up. It's really up to people if, when they're doing these sort of indoor exercises, if they want to wear their trainers. I'm barefoot. I didn't really make that as a conscious choice, but some people might prefer to wear trainers and things. Touch the floor and jump up. Great. People are starting to feel a bit warmer. Just going to do some star jumps. Just again, some different movements. Great. Probably want to, you kind of, probably want this sort of cardiovascular bit of your warm up to be at least 5 minutes. But obviously it depends what sort of parameters you're working within, and what your session's like, and how sort of also how active and dynamic your main session is. If you're doing sort of, and that'll probably influence what your warm-up needs to be like. And let's say, depending on your participants and how much space you've got, you could even try and do some little running drills just kind of on the spot. So you could try and maybe bring that heel up to that bum with some heel squeezes. You can do it every leg or every 3 legs. Just again, sort of increasing that range of movement while it's getting nice and warm up. Great. And again, if you feel comfortable doing it, we can bring our knees up to high knees. But again, if you'd rather just keep jogging or keep marching, that's good too. That's great, well done. Great. And I'm not sure how long that's been, but probably should have been timing. We're now going to just move into some mobility. So mobility is sort of all about just increasing the range of movement, making sure you're kind of ready to do the movements of the session. And sort of, I think often it's just helps you kind of loosen up and feel a bit better. So we'll start off sort of on all fours. And we're just going to kind of work into the thoracic rotation that we've got in the sort of mobility of our back. So just by waving with one of our arms, raising up towards the sky. So you can follow it around with your head, just really raising that kind of thoracic mobility. And we'll just do that again on that side. If you want to, you can kind of thread it around underneath, just sort of twist it around the other way. And bring it back up again to the sky. And you should find that as you do it, your kind of range of movement increases each time. That's great. And we'll just do that with the other side. With the other hand, raising up towards the sky. You might find you're a bit asymmetrical and much worse on this side. And again, sort of really working through that kind of thoracic mobility. Find you've been at a desk and things, I find you a bit tight. Given that we're in this position on our kind of hands and knees, we can do that nice movement where you sort of go up and arch your back as though you're being a cat, and then sort of come round, arch it the other way to what I think they call the cow position, or maybe I can't remember which one's cow and which one's cat, but it's just a nice way of sort of mobilizing through that spine. Great. We'll just do a bit of mobility of the hips. So we kind of come across and sort of sit on our bums with our feet on the floor. We can then sort of maybe put a bit of balance, kind of put your hands behind your back and sort of just twisting your knees to lay on the floor. Just moving, getting some movement in through those hips. Right, a bit of a clip there. But again, with these things, this is all about working within your range of movement, and definitely not kind of pushing anything. It's just about working within kind of the movement that you have. It's great. And you can maybe mobilize those ankles, a few circles each way. Again. and there's lots of different sort of mobility exercises and things out there. There's loads of great yoga and Pilates videos on the internet that are totally free, and lots of ideas and things there, and sort of find the bits you like and select the bits that you like from there. So we're gonna start our session now. I hope you feel vaguely warmed up, and so we're going to start off. So the order we're doing our exercises, I've got it here in case I forget. So we're starting with our glute bridge, and I'll talk us through it as we go. But just to let you know in advance, we're doing our glute bridge, our dead bug, and into our calf raise, our side glute raise, our bicycle crunch, our single leg balance, the Superman, the lunge, and then the toe touches, finishing with some hopping. So it's going to be 40 seconds per exercise with 15 seconds rest. So first of all, we're going to start in our glute bridge. So I've got a wee timer here, so it's going to be 40 seconds. I could actually share the slides and then we could see them as we go. Would that be?
It might take a wee while.
Okay, no, okay, that's grand. No, we'll talk it through as we go. So I think I'm just going to rotate my mat. Sorry. So we're starting off with our glute bridge. For this exercise, we're on our side, we're lying. Oh dear. We're lying on our back and with our knees close to our bum, and then we're rising up towards the sky. So I'm just going to start our timer. So
just before we start, there's been some discussion on the chat about risk assessment and potential mitigating factors for this kind of exercise. One thing we had discussed and thought about was the idea of maybe getting everyone to unmute during the exercise, so that if they did need any support of any kind, they could make that known easily.
yeah.
With 90 some participants, we thought that might get a bit crazy, but a possible halfway house would be if we can just ask anyone to unmute if they're on their own in their house. Then that means that support will be available if necessary, and that addresses some of the discussions in the chat this day.
Yeah, great. Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for thinking about safety. Very important, and think about how they. I think with, let's say you're in your own club scenario and you maybe got 15 people, then yeah, you could definitely have everyone have their microphones on so that people could ask for help if they need this and things. So that sounds very sensible. So yeah, very happy with that if everyone's happy. Great. So we'll start off with our first exercise as our glute bridge. So and I'll try and I'm just going to so I can see this one. Oh dear. We'll start in 3, 2, 1, go. So this is our glute bridge. So we're on our back. We've got our feet nice and close to our bum, and we're raising up to the sky, hips nice and high, counting, holding it for a count of 3, let's say, and lowering down. And we'll just repeat that. Rising up. So in terms of our coaching points, we're thinking about having our hips nice and high, really, really squeezing our glutes, and being nice and slow and controlled in our rise and our lower. If you're quite an expert, feel free to go straight into our single leg glute bridges. If you're doing that, really thinking about keeping those hips nice and level. Oh, sorry. Oh, I missed the rest. We're resting now. Sorry, team. I need to. Oh, I was on mute. That's no good. So we're having a wee rest now, 15 seconds, and our next exercise is our dead bug. So similar position. We're starting on our backs like so. So 2 seconds. So 3, 2, 1, go. It'll help now. I've not got my computer on. Sorry.
We'll mute this one and then keep the sound of that one.
Great technology. So we'll start on our dead bugs. So we're lowering opposite arms and legs, nice and slow and controlled. And Ian's going to sort out our technology problems, and I'm going to try not to kick him while I'm doing it. So with this exercise, we're really thinking about keeping that back flat against the floor. Yeah.
Okay, sorted, I think. Oh no. No, but I muted you. So it should be fine.
Okay. Oh, sorry, team. Now you can rest now. Sorry. Sorry, guys. So our next exercise is going to be our calf raises. So if you want to transition to somewhere where there's a step, or there's or you can use your favorite recipe book or your least favorite recipe book. That's an option. So, or if you just want to do it onto the floor, that's also absolutely fine. I'm going to use the Chambers Dictionary. Is that sinful? Maybe it is. So again, so for our different and sorry, I think just having problem with time. Okay, so with your calf raises, so we're thinking about having kind of a 4 foot on your step or on the floor, and then raising and lowering nice and slowly. And as you can see, this ankle is doing naughty things. It needs to stay nice and straight. And yeah, thinking about going nice and slowly. And if you're finding hard, definitely use some support, be that a wall, be that a chair. But if you're finding it really easy, you can go into your single leg. And that's 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and rest. And our next exercise is going to be our side glute raise. So we're on our side with that bottom leg bent and nice and stacked on our hips and our knees. And go. So we're raising our leg to the sky, making sure that it's not coming out in front of us and it's nice and behind us. And again, nice and slow control, working within that range of movement that we've got. Really focusing on those hip abductors. Oh, that's 20 seconds, so we can change sides. Great, 2 and 1 and rest. Well done, everyone. So our next exercise is going to be our bicycle crunch. So we're on our back, and we're taking in that opposite arm to opposite leg. And go. So opposite arm to opposite leg. If you can, you want to keep your feet floating above the floor. But if you want to, this is where you can just have your legs on the floor and do the movement with your arms, or you can have your legs on the floor and bring each leg up in turn. Therefore, you're not loading quite so much. But really thinking about the twist and engaging those obliques. And 5 seconds. And stop. Well done. That's great. That's at 40 seconds. So we're now coming into our single leg balance. So in this one, we're choosing the difficulty level of our choice, be that single leg holding onto something, or and go. So choose your favorite first leg. So we're kind of balancing. If you need that support, go for it. If you're finding it too easy, add in some arms or close those eyes and really think about engaging the glute of that standing leg, really keeping those hips nice and level and making sure that knee stays nice and strong and it doesn't wobble in like that. So yeah, nice and strong. Oh, and I missed it halfway. We'll change legs. Sorry, I can't multitask. This is great. And making sure we've got a nice kind of active stance. We're not locking out that knee, and it's nice and we've got a nice bend in that knee. And rest. Great. So our next exercise is going to be our Superman exercise. So we're going to come into our tabletop position, making sure that we've got that nice neutral spine and neutral pelvis. That kind of our knees are underneath our hips and our hands are underneath our shoulders. And we're going to raise and go. And we're going to raise and lower our arms and legs. You can either do the same arm and leg, or you can change each side each time. and really thinking about keeping those hips nice and level, that back really nice and flat. Imagine that tray of drinks. When you're bringing your leg out, really think about engaging that glute behind to keep it nice and flat, and rest. Well done. So our next exercise is going to be our lunge. Again, we can start off with whichever leg you like. So, and that's the end of that rest. So into our lunge. So take that step forward, making sure that we've got those nice 90 degrees in our hips and our knees. So that should really be the other way around. If you're thinking about kind of our adaptation to make it slightly easier, if we go into our lunge position, you can then sort of just go up and down in that position. You really can still think about engaging those glutes, but being slightly less dynamic. And I missed the halfway thing again, sorry team. So 5 seconds to go. And if you want, you can add in that twist, or add those arms above the head, and rest. Grand. Our next exercise is going to be our toe touches. So a bit of abs work. So we're on our back, our legs nice and straight, and go. And we're just reaching up for the sky, trying to reach those toes. Really kind of crunching through on those abs. And again, our sort of variations, bringing your legs down and then still just kind of reaching for the sky. Or if you want to, you can keep those legs on the floor and again, reach for the sky.
So some discussion here, maybe when you're in a vest or something, about the kind of terminology really of neutral spine versus straight spine, this kind of thing.
Lovely. Oh, sorry. 5 seconds to go, team. Well done. We'll talk about that between sets. Great. And rest. Well done. And our last exercise for this our mini circuit here is going to be our hopping. So I'll try and remember to stay when we're halfway. So choose your favourite first leg and go. So imagine hopping. Given that we're Orienteers, we'll hop to the clock face. So hop to the north and back in. Hop to the east. And again, if hopping's not for you, the other option about just sort of changing between your stance legs and really holding that balance is another option here. And when you are hopping, really think about sticking that landing and not sort of as much as you can. And if that is just, if that is, I forgot to say halfway again. And if that is just kind of change hopping to really small distances, then that's a good option. Great, and that's our first 10 exercises done. So well done team, we'll have a little break there. We'll have a minute or so rest and then we'll run it through again. This kind of chat about kind of neutral spine versus straight spine. So your spine has got lots of curves in it as it's meant to. You've got sort of your kind of cervical bit of your spine, your thoracic, and then your lumbar, and then your sacral, and it is meant to curve. So your neutral spine is just that sort of the position where it kind of has the curves in the way, in a sort of a natural place where it should be, and that's important because it is kind of where all your with all the sort of muscles and things connecting to it, and where you can get sort of best movement of the muscles and joints that connect to your spine, I suppose. I'm no expert, but I suppose it's just about making sure. So let's say you've got your kind of, let's say your neck, for example, you can have, when you're doing some exercise, you want to make sure you're not sort of all crunched up, you want to make sure you've got your kind of all nice and in line. So
I think this arose from you saying things like, let's keep our back flat when doing dead bugs and things, which I think was just you trying to say, let's not let it
arch. Yes, yeah. So it's kind of that.
So just the terminology, really, I think, is the root of this question.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Tim.
Yeah, but is that correct?
Yeah. So, for example, when you're doing the dead bug, what you don't want to do is, I don't know if you can see my spine. It's kind of, I don't want it to kind of come up like that. If that makes sense. It wants to be nice and flat. You should still be able to get some hands in underneath. It shouldn't be so flat that you couldn't kind of get some hands in underneath.
Maybe not all the way.
Right. Yeah. Grand. Well done, everyone. That's a good rest there. We'll start again in 15 seconds. This time I'll try and get better at the halfway thing.
So they've suggested keep the core engaged.
Keep the core engaged. Yes, I like it. It's great. Yes, thank you. Great, lovely. So we'll start again with our glute bridges, and we'll start in. It would really help if this would beep. Will you help me?
I thought we sorted that.
No, it's not beeping. No, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. Should have tried this out before on the multiple devices. Okay, we'll start in our glute bridges in 3, 2, 1. That's great. So we're into our lying on our back with our feet by our arms and raising up to the sky. And nice and slow and controlled. Yeah, just turn it off. It doesn't matter. Great, well done everyone, and that's 5 seconds to go. That's great. And great, well done everyone. And now we're coming to our dead bugs, where we're going to keep our core nice and engaged. So we're kind of on our backs, arms and legs up, and go 40 seconds. So we're kind of lower opposite arms and opposite legs. So when we're saying keep our core engaged, often people think about it as keeping everything zipped up, or kind of pulling the belly button in towards the spine. There's different ways to sort of try and visualize what we're saying there.
Try to stop yourself from weeing.
Yeah, so all sorts of different things. So our option is, if we're just going to raise, we could just lower one limb at a time. That could be an option. Just one arm, just to sort of adjust sort of again, it's sort of all about our kind of levers and things. That's great. And 3, 2, 1, well done. 15 seconds rest. So we're coming into our calf raises. So I'm just going to do them off the floor this time. I'll try and remember to do halfway. People are doing it. So, and go. So we're kind of raising up and coming nice and slowly back down. And this time, if you want to try, you could try doing it with a bent knee. And so you can feel that it's just working that slightly lower calf muscle. And that's 20 seconds, halfway if you want to swap legs.
Some people are interested in your views on this concept of keeping the core engaged, and other ways to practice engaging the core and this kind of thing, maybe for the end.
Yeah, great. So we're next going to go into our side leg raises. So we're lying on our side, got our bottom leg bent, and we're ready to raise that leg. And go. Great. Hopefully, but by the end of sort of after a few, you should maybe start feeling it sort of engaged in that sort of side of the hips. Again, nice and slow and controlled. And that's halfway. And if you want to play with the exercise, why don't you kind of play with having it just holding the leg there. It's a bit of a static hold, or you can add in that circle. And well done, that's all done. Well done. So our next one's our bicycle crunch. I don't know why I just got up, because we can stay on our mat. Again, sort of picking the level for you. So nice and slow and controlled, opposite arm to opposite leg. And again, it's sort of about making sure that you don't sort of arch the back. Really getting that twist in so you engage those obliques. 10 seconds, well done. Three, two, one. Well done, that's great. So we're now going to come into our single leg balance. So if I forgot to tell you to change legs last time, we could do the opposite leg. And again, choose your level. So be that holding onto a door frame, holding onto a windowsill, or adding in some running arms and go. And yeah, really thinking about keeping those hips nice and level, that standing leg glute really engaged to keep that knee nice and stable, and making sure that your foot, you can really think about rooting in through the foot, through the big toe, and keeping nice and stable through there. Oh, and I've got to say halfway, change legs.
There's comments praising your form, Zoe.
Oh wow, thanks everyone. That's great. And 3, 2, 1. Well done. So our next exercise, we're back to our Superman, back to balancing those strengths. So we're in our tabletop position and we're raising those opposite arms and legs. If you want to go this time into your plank Superman, feel free. And go. So opposite arms and legs. And again, our variation, just doing a leg at a time and really thinking about balancing things. And again, the slower, the more controls you can do it, the more you'll find you're engaging those different muscles. And 10 seconds. If you find that this position's really, you can't do this position, you can't be on your knees, you could think about putting a cushion underneath, and that just kind of makes it a bit nicer on the knees. And stop. Well done. And we're into our lunges again. So choose your favorite type of lunge, with that option also being that kind of static lunge. And go. So taking that nice step, not too far, not too close, so you can get those nice 90-degree angles. And thinking about if you can coordinate it, having your running arms as well as you come. Engaging, really thinking about engaging that back quad, sorry, that back glute. And thinking about nice and balanced, and really thinking about the top half of your body as well. It's being nice and upright, kind of chest up, looking forward, not looking down at your feet. Great. So 5 seconds to go. Well done. And stop. Well done. Great. Then we're into our toe touches. So just a bit of outwork. We're nearly there. Well done, everyone. And so legs nice and high, or if you want, legs can be sort of bent or on the floor and reaching to the sky. Well done. So really thinking about kind of rolling up through your core. And if you want variation, you can reach up and then lower the legs to make it a bit harder. Great stuff. 10 seconds to go, team. And stop. Well done. Great. And our last exercise, we're back onto our hops to finish off. And good stuff. So choose either the leg you did, the other leg to the one you did last time, or and hopping to your clock faces or your compass points, and really thinking about sticking those landings to help work on those that ankle stability. Again, our kind of option, if we're not wanting to hop, let's say you might be having some foot problems or some ankle problems, is sort of just moving from side to side and then really kind of holding that balanced position. Oh, sorry, that's halfway, just gone. Well done. That's great. Well done, everyone. So that's that circuit run through 2 times. As you can see, doesn't actually take up that much time at all. But hopefully it sort of works on different muscles, and people had a go at doing some exercises. And as you find, when you do these sort of things, you always find things that don't work, like the fact that I was having device issues and that I couldn't remember to say when I was halfway. And I think there's lots of ways to kind of and to kind of get over these issues, I probably should have had slightly more practice at doing it beforehand. So let's just say maybe having a timer that's part of your screen, or I think it would have been good if I'd had a list of exercises for you guys to see as well, so you could see as we were running through it. But you know, all learning points. So just in the interest of time, we're not going to do any sort of cooling down stretches today, but there it is. I think most of you guys will know lots of good stretches, so maybe later as part of your you could do a bit of stretching and things, but we're going to just come back together, and I'm just going to reshare the slides if that's okay.
I think you want to probably double click on that to make it bigger or something. Drag it bigger. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, just 2 seconds. I hope people enjoyed that, and sorry about my poor instructions. That's okay.
Do you want me to sort that and you to
Yes,
start?
okay. Let's go. We're nearly there. Lovely. 2 seconds. Can you see?
Yeah. That one is showing you what you've seen.
Okay. Great. So, oh no, sorry. Great stuff. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience with our technology and not quite and sound and things. How not to do it. So I thought what would be really good was to sort of just come together, given that as kind of you guys have really shown through this session that, you know, you've all got lots of expertise, lots of ideas, and just thinking about kind of what we can kind of learn from each other and share. And I'm really, really grateful to Dawn from FEO, who's been doing some strength and conditioning with FEO, who's really kindly agreed to talk to us about what FEO have been doing and any sort of what her experiences have been. So if it's okay, Dawn, would I be able to hand over to you, and would you be able to say a wee bit about what's been happening in Forth Valley?
Of course, yes. Thank you, Zoe. That was a super session. Thanks very much. I can't see myself on screen, but I assume others can now. Yes.
We can hear you, so that's fantastic.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yes, I mean, FEO, we've been running a sort of a very informal session, a sort of circuit, sort of stretching for many, many years now. And there's been probably about 10 to 15 of us in the group, and it's been in a church hall. And obviously with lockdown, we sort of moved into Zoom probably about a week or so before actually lockdown happened. We started to think there's a wee bit too much risk here, using a hall which was used by the elderly, putting other people at risk as well as ourselves, using mats and things. So I brought it. A few of us, I must say like yourself, none of us are qualified, Pilates or, yoga teachers, but we sort of tend to take it in turn, probably with myself in the lead in the latter period. Myself and Nicola Melville, who's on the call as well, we would tend to just sort of lead the session, and everyone did it at their own risk effectively. They knew, what they should be doing and what they should be doing. So we took on to Zoom just with a small group for the first week. By the second week, it'd been advertised and it was a club activity. And I think by the third week, we had over 40 people joining on the Zoom. And when I think back, we've only, since that mid-March last year, we've only actually been 1 week on a Monday where we've not run a session, which was between Christmas and New Year. So it's worked out well, and it's expanded it to everyone. I mean, and the sort of exercise we do very similar to what you've been doing there. We have different stretches. It's sort of a mix of Pilates, yoga, core stability, a lot of the exercises recognized there. It's quite difficult. We tend to keep to very much the same routine each week, just because you can't see what people are doing. And when they're doing it in their own homes, it's a little bit easier. They start to sort of not have to keep looking at the screen, and they start to know the exercises well and can sort of kind of do them themselves. I think I do put in a bit of mix of abilities. So I'll say, here's different levels that you can use. And I think that helps because we've got families joining together. So we've got everything from young children to the retired. So it is quite a real mix. Things like space are an issue. It's halfway through the session, we do this sort of mix, and then Roger, my husband Roger, runs, many of you know Roger Goddard, he runs now a sort of circuit sort of halfway through. So we do slightly more sort of planks and sort of on the mat exercises. Then we have a quick circuits, which is a bit like what you've done there, you know, where you have sort of 40 seconds, 6 exercises. I find if the 2 of us are in this room or the lounge or something doing burpees, you know, the lights are shaking and everything. And with certain exercises we're doing, but we're using our arms and legs, we're kicking each other. And you see that a bit where if there's groups all doing it in the same room. So it's all quite funny. And, you know, I mean, always since we've been running it for years, everyone says it's great, it prevents injury and things like that. I think the only other things that I would say, I wrote down 1 or 2 things, and that's things, yes, sort of space, yeah, difficult when you can't see people, you know, making sure they understand not to do anything if it doesn't feel right or anything like that. And it's quite a social thing altogether. So at the end, there's quite a few people who stay on and we'll have a little bit of a chat and everything. And I think that's great. I do certain exercises where we're doing stretches and we put our arms up and then we turn and we sort of wave at the camera, you know, with those jazz hands and just a little bit of interaction and stuff like that. I think the question is that when we go back, it's maybe not quite, so when we go back to being the hall is almost a little bit if we go back to using the hall. This has opened up, but you know, when we just ran it as a small group in the hall, only a few of the local, you know, FAO stretches over, like many clubs, stretches over a large area. So only a few of us could attend, and we were maybe having 10 to 15, and we've now, I say, sometimes as many as 40. So I think when we go back to the hall, because I think there will be the need to have that face-to-face, or sometimes we've run it outside, is maybe having a link up. So we've got Zoom and bring others, or we just have to have a separate second session, something like that. Yes, so that's really about all. I know you're a bit short of time, so I won't talk for any more.
Yeah.
But that's a bit.
Thank you so much, Dawn. It's really good to hear kind of how what you've been doing with FEO, sort of, and how it's transitioned kind of into lockdown and things, and how successful that's been, and just how just sort of a kind of as an exemplar to the club that this is something that really does work and people do really enjoy. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I think you raised really good points about sort of having something that a routine that sort of people learn and get really familiar with. I think that's really useful. So thank you very much, Dawn. And I'm just wondering if there's any other clubs out there on this call that have anything that they'd like to share. I know there's a lot of people on the call, and as I said, there's been so much ideas and expertise coming through the session. If anyone would like to unmute themselves and say some words, feel free. I don't know if people want to just announce themselves in the chat box. They're going to do that just so that we can. I don't know if there's going to be. Everyone's going to want to speak once.
Yeah, Zoe, it's Hamish at PFO.
Hi, Hamish. Thank you.
We do online club nights, and we do part fitness and part technical.
Great.
Trying to do teaching the compass on Zoom is quite an interesting challenge, I found. Yeah, we tend to do the circuits so that there is an exercise followed by a technical bit, like a puzzle, like you would do in a hall, like we used to do. Yeah. I work on the system that having the rest the same as the exercise. There's a virtue in having the rest bit between an exercise the same as length of time as the exercise, so you don't have a degradation of the actual technique.
Great.
So I tend to do it that way. So we do half exercise with a bit of a puzzle, and then second half of the club night, because we only do an hour, is a technical thing, which is the challenge, which is what I'm really challenged with.
What sort of technical things have you been doing, Hamish? What sort of have you found it?
Good question. We have done things like the process, which you will know from Mark. Yeah, we've done that because I have a presentation on that, because I did it a couple of talent camps when I was at RDO, and so I was able to see that. We've done the toolbox from Orienteering, the Orienteering toolbox you might come across. We've done MapRunF sessions, setting up MapRunF courses.
Great.
Next one is going to be elongating the control, the actual control area from Terry Giorgio. So I'm working on quite technical things, because what we found with our old club night was very junior orientated, which put a lot of orienteers off. So now, not so much junior orientating, but they've sort of disappeared to a degree. We now sort of bring in the really technical stuff to try and get people thinking a bit more about the technique when they get back.
Great. Oh, sounds really good. And it's really great how you've been able to kind of combine both the physical side with the technical side. And that's, yeah, it must be a lot of, yeah, kind of thinking up all those ideas. So thanks very much for sharing that, Hamish.
So just to feed in there as well, you might remember Hamish's comment from the chat earlier that he, of course, runs these weekly online sessions and is a very, very experienced and knowledgeable strength and conditioning coach that's led past coaching conference sessions on it as well. So he's very kindly said we're also okay to share his email afterwards if anyone did want to take him up on sort of a bit more kind of almost mentoring or just watching one of his sessions. So things that we'll share at the end as per this slide include these slides again. We'll save the chat, we think we know how, and we will share the risk assessment of the session as well, and as well as Hamish's contact as well. So that's very kind of him there, thank you.
I don't know where these words have appeared to, but thank you whoever wrote them. So yes, if you guys have anything that you think would be helpful, Orienteering, you know, it's a big volunteer community, and everyone, it's great that everyone really likes to help out each other. So that's great. If you have anything that you think would be helpful to share, then if you ping it to me or Denise and things, we'll be able to share it with all the participants and things. Any other individuals out there who'd like to say anything about anything, or any questions or anything? What time are we on? Everyone's tummies will be rumbling.
Zoe,
Uh-huh.
it's Hilary Palmer here.
Hello.
I've had some technical problems with my Zoom just in the last half hour or so. So before it all dies on me, I'd just like to say thank you very, very, very much indeed for doing this session for us, assisted by your glamorous assistant. And
it's very helpful having one of them, isn't it?
I'm sure all of us have got a great deal of confidence and enthusiasm from the way you've put all the information over. So thanks very, very much indeed.
Oh, no, thank you very much, and yeah, thanks Hilary for arranging all of the conference. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, and yeah, thanks everyone for all their efforts. And it's so clear from kind of everyone's participation, kind of just how much great work there is going on out there, and everyone's just so keen to, you know, keep everyone active and keep people engaged with that, despite all the challenges that there is just now. So anyone else wants to come to the floor and say anything, or any questions? Sorry, I'm not very good at yeah, so Roger's saying that ESOC is kind of doing a thing, and I have to say, Roger, I was always Roger definitely used to outperform me at the Edinburgh University circuits classes. I was very, very, very impressed by Roger's S&C ability. Great.
Excellent. I'm just going to say, Zoe, thanks very much. I was missed a few people who got bumped out, and tried to get you back in as soon as you could. So sorry if you were pounced out of Zoom for some unknown reason, but I think we've done pretty well, and great balancing act between the two of you and Ian has been fantastic. And your positivity is really what I've taken hugely from the session. Just delivery and being a very positive, active person is huge. It's a lot of what it's all about being a coach, I think. I would just, is it okay to say just this afternoon session that on the remote terrain workshop, as you may have noticed, some of you will have been invited by Ian and some will have been invited by Lynn Walker. There was such an interest in the workshop that we enlisted Lynn last minute. So we're thankful and grateful that she's able to jump on board last minute to deliver that. It will start at 2 o'clock. Again, there's quite a few participants in each, so it might take a while to get people in the rooms. But once we get rocking and rolling, it will be lots of fun, and there's breakout rooms, and it should be very interesting. I'm looking forward to that so much. So just to let you know that there are 2 different sessions, Lynn and Ian. So just wanted to put that out there for everybody. And I hope that's been a fantastic start to the conference, and thanks very much. And I think the participation just seems to be growing and growing. From what Peter sent an email to me this morning, it's like we might actually have to continue to do this again. It's a fantastic way to get lots of people across the nations involved. So Thanks very much, everybody. And thank you again, Ian and Zoe. Fantastic.
Thank you everyone for joining, and yeah, have a great day, and have a good weekend wherever you may be, and yeah, thank you very much for joining, and we'll send out some resources and share the fun.
Yes.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Denise for
Yes,
coordinating,
yeah,
and yeah, thanks.
Zoe and Ian, just stay on so we can figure out how we can save the chat and such. So
Will do.
Okay. Bye to everybody
Thanks
else.
everyone. Hopefully see you at an orienteering event soon.
Well done, Zoe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Zoe. Bye.
Denise, if
I'm here.
thank you.
You're welcome. That's great.
Denise,
Yes, I can hear whoever that is.
there's a button at the bottom that says File. I think you can store everything by doing that.
The bottom of my screen, is it under More, perhaps?
Chat. Press Chat.
Chat, okay. And
Then, if you're about to write a message to somebody, to everyone or whatever, there's further right. There's a little file icon.
let's have a look. I don't see the file icon. I see.
We think we have it, so we're just trying that right now.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you haven't, and I've got a different version of Zoom, I can email it to Ian.
That would be really good, just as a backup. Thank you so much.
Do you have it, Ian?
At least
I
that's
don't
theory.
see it in my chat. Let's go up top.
So I'll hang on a minute as well then. Hang on.
Who's that that's chatting to me? Oh, is that John?
Yes, JK, yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't see it at the bottom. All I see is the option to add more chat. I am the host, Ian, you're the co-host. Okay.
That seems to be bringing in that seems to be attaching a file. You can do right click and select all, but then I can't seem to be able to copy it.
Very strange.
I have been using this for all my meetings for about 5 years, but it's changed.
Yeah, I know I've saved it before in other meetings, and now I'm a bit perplexed. As you say, it should be straightforward to say save chat.
Well, you recorded.
It may be recorded.
You've recorded it, so you get it from that.
Can you? How does it come out in the recording?
It saves it somewhere, and then you'll and I'm thinking of we usually have the transcript on for hard of hearing people, but that doesn't seem to be engaged.
Very frustrating. Well,
I can't seem to select. Have you tried selecting it as well? It doesn't seem to select.
Yeah, I've tried all these things without yet being successful. Yeah, we tried that. It seems to be a way of pulling a file in as opposed to.
It's filing in, yeah. Oh well, just going to go through and copy and paste them all. I think that the chat to everybody is in the recording.
okay. Well, let's hope.
You could probably stop the recording now, and somebody should get an email about it, the recording, and then they could even have a look at that before you hang up this session.
Yes. So if I stop the recording, it's not going to do anything to us, is it?